Hello, everyone. Welcome back to VAATV.com, the real estate show at VAATV with Mr. Scott Barlow and Linh Vi. Hello.
Hi, how are you today?
Yeah, very good, Scott. I was thinking like the best weather in the world.
That's it.
At this time, at Arizona.
Arizona's got the best weather. It's not too humid, and it's nice and
cool. And
at night,
I can wear a dress with short sleeve and
short sleeve shirts during the day.
And it's not hot. It's just cool, really cool down,
and plenty of sunshine.
Yeah.
So
a little bit of raining last night. Yeah, last night a little bit.
Not too bad though.
Not too bad.
But if you like blue skies and sunshine, you're in the right place. Come to Arizona.
And then buy some houses here. Find Mr. Scott Barlow. And today Mr. Scott can let us know, let us know some of the investment that he helped with people in the past. And he was thinking, a lot of people were asking about investing into multiple family. And he's going to go into detail so everyone can learn from how he do the calculation and how we think that's going to be a profit for us.
Yes. So in the past few weeks, we've talked about a number of different things, but today what we'll actually do is we're going to start putting numbers to it to see how you would actually evaluate a property. And I might add that some of this information, it applies both to multifamily as well as it does to single family. So a lot of it will be a little bit on the techie side, little calculations the first few times. But if you're out there and you think that you need a copy of some of the worksheets that I'm going to be showing you, I'd be more than happy to send them to you, email them to you. You'll have my email address at the end of the presentation. So feel free to reach out. I'd be glad to help you out with it. So the first slide that we have is just nothing more than a fourplex that I sold last year.
Right.
This particular property was just on the market just for about 9 days. And the next slide that we have on that is kind of an excerpt from the MLS system. And this is where I listed the property. Just real quickly.
Wow.
It just gives you an excerpt, but some of the most important information that I want to pass on to you. And if you need to, you can stop and take a look and get a better view of what's on there.
Right.
But once again, it tells us all that it was a 4-unit building. Tells me that all 4 apartments were 870 square feet. The average rent was $1,200 a month. And they were 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom units. Now, in addition to the fourplex, there is a standalone on one end of it, a standalone laundry room with coin-operated washer and dryer, and that's an additional source of profit for the owner. So I'm going to go through some additional numbers here and give you an idea on some additional features. But the building itself has a tile roof. It has a stucco finish. It's 2 stories with stairs on each end. And the air conditioning is ground-mounted units, and they're on the rear of the building. The parking lot has enough room so that almost every unit can have 2 spaces. So it's a good-sized parking lot. And in fact, there was a little storage building that one of the tenants asked for permission to put on the property so they could store some things. But each apartment has a freestanding oven, has its own refrigerator, garbage disposal, microwave, and the units themselves are unfurnished. They do have fire extinguishers, mini blinds, things like that. Once again, I said the square footage on it was 870 square feet. If you remember from previous shows, we talked about what's the average size of apartments in the Phoenix metro area. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, approximately 800 square feet. So this is just a little bit bigger, but once again, it's as far as the rents are concerned, $1,200 per month. And when I did the rent survey, we'll go into it once again. The rent survey for the neighborhood was $1,500 for similar types of units. And I might add, because of the zoning and where this was located, there were other buildings that were built with the same blueprints. So there's good comparable buildings out there.
Right.
The property was listed for $725,000, and the new buyer came in and they applied for it using a conventional loan. I might add that because they were going through and getting a loan, that there was an appraisal that was required, and it did appraise for the full amount. Now, the appraisal on the property like this, they will do an appraisal on the building itself. Okay. They'll also do part of their appraisal is on the income method. So once again, with some of the things that we're pulling here, those are the same types of things that the appraiser would use in putting a value on
to see the
building.
Value of the place,
Yes.
by getting how much income. Yeah.
Exactly right. So the next in that sheet that we showed you, one of the columns there talks about what's the income and expenses. The average, as I said before, the average apartment was $1,200 a month. Right. You've got 4 of them, $4,800 a month times 12 months. So now you're looking at $57,600 per year. Wow. And all of the figures that we're going to come out with here are going to be the annual figures so that we can calculate some different things here. Wow. Other expenses, or I should say, with that projected schedule of income, we also put in a 2% vacancy rate. Now, even though this particular owner had not experienced vacancies in almost 6 years, you still want to be able to be a little bit conservative with your calculations. If you feel better using a higher number, such as a 5% vacancy or 10% vacancy, if you've got an area where there's a lot of turnover, then do so. It's far better to with these worksheets that we're going to go through, you want to be as truthful as you can, as accurate as you can, and you don't want to fool yourself. So don't put too rosy a picture on it. Be very realistic about it and be very conservative. Right. So we had approximately 2% of the gross income that we took off from the top as vacancy rate, but added back in $100 per month or $1,200 per year for profit on the washer and dryer in the laundry room. And then other expenses we had, of course, we had property taxes at $1,962. We had property insurance at $2,000. While I'm talking about insurance, I might add that rate probably has gone up this year. The insurance industry last year experienced some difficulties with the claims throughout different parts of the country. And if you are looking at putting property insurance on rental properties, make sure that you're shopping some of the different brokers. You can save some money, but there's been some really large increases, and I can't emphasize that enough. Right. Utilities, your water and sewer is paid for by the landlord, and that was about $150 per month or $1,800 per year. And some of the other expenses that we had included electricity. Even though the tenants are paying their own electricity for their kitchen appliances, lights, and everything. There's still some other electrical needs that the landlord had to pay for, such as outside security lighting, and of course to operate the washer and dryer. Right. Additionally, he had pest control, just to make sure that didn't have cockroaches or scorpions or any of that kind of good stuff. Because yes, in Arizona we do get scorpions. Very afraid of that. Garbage removal at about $100 per month or $1,200 per year, and the parking lot maintenance of about $1,000 per year, and landscaping costs. If you noticed, it was pretty much desert landscaping, so that minimizes your cost, but you still have to do some things to trim them up, trim the plants up, and a little bit of cleanup. So estimated another $800 per year for that. Wow. So it adds up, but all of those are your expenses. And as a owner, those are things that you need to pay attention to as you move forward. So once again, be conservative. Don't think that you can cut costs. For example, one of the things I see people where they cut costs is they go, well, I'm not even going to put maintenance into the building. You always have to put maintenance. You always have to do maintenance on the building. True. So you can't get away from that. The next slide that we have is actually one, and it comes from the tax records. And it's just a short excerpt there, but the things I want to point out is what the tax records can do is give you the actual square footage of the lot. They can tell you what the zoning is, both county zoning as well as city zoning, and it's appropriately zoned in this case. The very bottom one tells what the legal class was, and the legal class on it is for a fourplex, and it has the appropriate legal class. So for taxation purposes, it's done right. Additionally, you can see what the lot square footage is and what the living space square footage is on the building.
Right.
You'll have an idea of the basics of construction on the building. In this case, it was a wood frame construction, and it's a stucco finish with a tile roof. So that type of information is available, and that's part of the valuation information that the assessor's office will use in putting together what a property tax bill will look like on that property. And if we can have our next couple of slides, I'm just going to pop them up here just real quick. But if they're, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. We've got some definitions I want to go through before I get to those points.
Oh, the definition. The
first one is gross rent multiplier. And gross rent multiplier, it's typically a screening metric that a lot of investors use. And what they do is they compare what the value of the property is using the income versus what the purchase price is. It is kind of a quick and dirty way of going, okay, if the property is worth $100,000 and I'm getting $10,000 a year income off of it, it'll take me 10 years. Well, that's not a totally accurate picture, but it is a screening method. The reason it's not totally accurate is just for some of the reasons we just talked about. You do have expenses. So if you were getting $10,000 of income, you'd still have property taxes and maintenance. And all the expenses. So that $10,000 does get diminished. A second method that a lot of investors use is cap rate. And cap rate is calculated off of some of the measurements that we're going to do with the income as well as with the expenses. And what we're going to do is actually come up with net operating income, which is the full income less the expenses, and then we're going to compare the net operating income versus the purchase price. So the net operating income will be divided by the purchase price, in this case $725,000, and it will yield the cap rate. The nice thing about a cap rate is it's a quick way to select and to screen different properties. You can compare a single family home cap rate wise to a duplex cap rate wise to a fourplex to 100 units, or you could also do it with an income. I mean, with
commercial building.
A commercial building. So it gives you an idea a little bit on
how to calculate and figure out the cap rate.
To calculate it, but an idea on what type of return that you're going to get for it. And then the last definition that I want to give to you is Performa. It's a Latin phrase, and it means for the sake of form or as a matter of form. But what we're really going to do is we're going to talk about it in the aspect of a financial statement. A good, informative financial statement on a property is going to use GAA, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to jump to where we're going to put in some projections. And in the biggest projection that I'm going to use in this particular instance is, once again, we're going to use the actual numbers to calculate the cap rate and the GRM, but then we're going to do a Performa version where, remember I said that the neighborhood was at $1,500 for the average rent. We'll take it up to $1,500 so you can actually get an idea of what it would have produced had it been at market rents in the area. And the next couple of forms that I'm going to give you are simply blank forms that I use when I go out and I take a look at a property. And I collect the financial information. I might add that these forms are pretty straightforward. If you get to the point where you're wanting to look at a home or a apartment building, I'd be happy to send them to you so that you can use them yourself when you go out and take a look. And I highly recommend that you go out and look at every single property that you're going to do, because you want to start up high, start with the roof. Is the roof in good condition? Because if the roof is not in good condition, somebody's going to have to pay for it.
Right.
It's got to be fixed. Otherwise, you're going to have water penetration into your building. And over time, that destroys things.
Right.
The other thing is, many cases, air conditioning units are up on top of the roof.
Right.
In this particular building, they were ground mounted, so they were easy to get a look at. But take a look at them, see if they look really old, really rusted, if they're on their last legs, because as it stands right now, there's a lot of changes coming to the HVAC industry. Some of the coolants that those old units have is no longer available. And so when they break down or you're out of coolant, you're going to probably have to just buy a brand new unit.
Wow.
And they've gotten much more expensive.
That's true. Yeah.
So now I'm going to move right on into doing some of the numbers. One of the first ones that I have is where we actually do the annual income and expenses. And I think it's probably about probably about 5 slides in, and it's got handwriting on it. But what we did there on that one is I basically filled it in, and I put in there that it's all 2-bedroom units. I put in what the annual income is. Once again, $1,200 times 4 is $4,800 per month, times 12 months gives us $57,600 in gross scheduled income.
Right.
I use 2% as a vacancy deduction. Use whatever you want, but try to be as realistic and as truthful as you can.
Right.
Be conservative. And at 2%, that deducted $1,162 from the gross scheduled income. And then back on the income side, we had $1,200 per month from the laundry. So we add that back in. That gives us a gross adjusted income of $57,648. Then we move on to the.
You put the maintenance, all that. Laundry maintenance.
I put that. I put all of the expenses on the form as well. Okay. So real estate taxes, and in this particular case, the real estate taxes were $1,962. The property insurance was $2,000, as we had mentioned before. The water and sewer was $1,800. The electric expense was $1,000. And mind you, it wasn't really $1,000. It was $996 and some change. But I just round it up so that it makes easy calculations. And so you could do it if you wanted to get down to the.
Rather let the little bit pay extra.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you get more money, then you're happy.
It certainly gives you a quick method to evaluate the property. Pest control, $800. Rubbish or trash removal, $1,200 a year. Landscaping, parking lot maintenance was also $1,000. And we had $800 in accounting because when they did go to their tax people, you can do things like depreciation on the building because it's a commercial building. Sure. And you have reporting requirements because the tenants pay sales tax or privilege tax on rental property. So that has to be collected and sent into the state. So there's an expense in doing that. Right. But at all total, the operating expenses were $10,562. So we're going to calculate the net operating income. Remember once again that the net operating income included the deduction for vacancies, and it included adding back in the profit from the laundry room. So that was $57,648. The expenses that we just talked about totaled $10,562. So we subtract that out, and that gives us our net operating income of $47,086. Now that number is key because we're going to do a couple of calculations using that number. Yeah. Remember the other number, $725,000. That's what we sold it for. Mm-hmm. So let's do the gross rent multiplier. It's a very easy calculation. You take the $725,000 and you divide it by the $47,086, which was your net operating income, and it gives you the gross rent multiplier of 15.4. So if we use that kind of idea, that would give you, it would take about 15 and a half years worth of income to pay that building off. It's not quite the same, but it's just a ratio that I know some folks use. Lastly, we're going to calculate the capitalization rate or the cap rate. Yeah. So once again, we use the same numbers. We use the 47,086 and we divide it this time by the 725,000. That gives us a cap rate of 6.5%. So that makes it easy to look at other types of investments. If you're looking at a stock investment, it may only have a 4% return. Or if you're looking at a CD, it may only have a 2% return.
That's true.
You know, right now they're a little bit higher, but it does give you an idea of what those rates might be. So it helps you to kind of clarify in your mind and to help sort through things. Certainly when you're looking at other properties, you can see very quickly whether or not it's a good risk or a bad risk and what your rate of return might be. I know that it's usually a little more desirable for folks to have a higher cap rate, whereas when you get a cap rate that's too low, you may not be getting enough income to be able to pay your debts off. And the other thing I might add,
the cap is what you call it too low. It's like what is low, what is high?
Well, I
up
always
to 10 or what? Up to
I've seen it as high as 15.
Oh,
but generally when they get really high, those seem to be a little bit riskier.
Riskier, right? Yep. Because they calculate recent.
Yes. The one thing I want you to be very well aware of, we went through those numbers and we talked about expenses. They do not have anything to do at this point with what your debt ratio is or what your debt is. In other words, there's nothing on the mortgages in there.
Oh, okay.
So after that 47,086, you still may have to pay a mortgage unless you put down all cash. So bear that in mind.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to use another, I'm going to use Performa. So once again, we're going to go through the same exercise here, except we're going to use some different numbers. This time, instead of using $1,200 per month, we're going to use the $1,500 per month that is pretty much the market rent in that neighborhood. We're going to call it Performa, because it's not the actual number, but it's one that we're projecting where if that building owner had it at market rent, that's where it would be selling. So in this case, we're looking at 4 units, and each unit at $1,500. So now we're talking $6,000 of income, rental income per month from that building. So that would give us an annual gross scheduled income of $72,000.
Wow. Okay.
So just you can see real quickly how we just stepped up from the $57,600.
Right.
Now we also calculated again with a 2% vacancy rate, and it does change because of the higher amount of the building or higher amount of the Performa, but it's 1,440. We go through the same methodology. We're going to use actual income from the laundry room at $1,200. And so subtracting the vacancy rate, adding back in the laundry income, that gives us a gross adjusted income of $71,760.
Wow.
So compare that to where we were before at the $1,200 per month per apartment. Now we're at $1,500 per month per apartment. That's we compare the $71,760 to $57,648.
Wow.
That's pretty significant.
Yes.
I'm going to use the same, I'm not going to go through the income expenses. We're just going to use the same actual income, or excuse me, we're going to use the same actual expenses. And when we compare this, we're going to break it out and we're going to do the net operating income once again. So remember, net operating income is the gross schedule or the gross adjusted income less the operating expenses, and that gives you the net operating income. So in this case, 71,760 less the 10,562 gives us 61,198. And just to compare where we were on the other one, that was 47,086. So as you can see, we're significantly higher just by raising those rents to market rents. Now, we go through the same methodology once again. We take we're going to calculate the gross rent multiplier. We're going to use the net operating income of 61,198, and we're going to divide the 725 that it was purchased for, and that gives us 11.8, approximately 11.8 years of income to pay the building off. Remember, versus the 15.4 that we had with where we had the units that were at the actual at $1,200 per month each. Now, the capitalization rate also changes to the positive. So once again, we use the net operating income, the 71,760, and this time this time we divide that by 725,000, the actual purchase price, and that gives us a cap rate of 8.4%. So we move from 6.5 to 8.4 cap rate by increasing the income coming from those apartments. So it makes it really easy when you start comparing a building. Let's say that you were buying the building at the 6.5% cap rate. So you've got those, but you know that you've got several units that are coming up for renewal. Why not bring them up closer to where the market rent is? See what that does to both your income as well as to your cap rate. That makes it, and if you decide later on that you want to make that building available on the market, it gives you a much more valuable building, so that a buyer coming in can look at that building and see that it's producing up to its income potential. Now, the same steps that I just went through, you could do it with a single family home, you could do it with a duplex, you could do it with a fourplex, you could do it with 100 units. But the big things that you need to make sure is just make sure that the numbers you're getting are the real numbers. Some of the numbers you can check. The owners certainly would have all of the bills.
The tax record, they can check for sure, right?
The tax records you can check.
The history of all the electrical usage and the water, things like that.
Yes, SRP can provide all of that.
And then like maintenance, well, the only thing we cannot check is the maintenance because nobody knows, right?
Well, in some cases you can find out things, but certainly you want to get a copy of the leases. You want to, and if possible, get a copy of the income statements that they use for their tax records. Because if they're playing games, and like I've said before, we've had instances where sellers of some large apartment units claim to have a much higher occupancy rate, and as it turned out, it was somewhat on the fraudulent side. That there were a lot of tenants who were not paying, even though they were living in the apartments, they weren't paying.
But they don't pay, so you get calculated for the income for the month.
Exactly.
We have to be careful for those. Of course, what's the paper that they need to prove that? Extobel?
It's called an estoppel certificate. And in many cases, the lender, if you're going through a bank, they will require a copy of the estoppel certificates and a copy of the lease. The nice thing about an estoppel certificate is, let's suppose that you're just a small landlord, or you're buying the building from just a small landlord. That's his only property. He self-manages the building. And maybe he lives a little far away, so now it's convenient to have one tenant who keeps an eye on things. Maybe he picks up trash in the parking lot. Maybe he trims the bushes or something along those lines. If he's doing something and he's getting compensated for it, that needs to show up on the estoppel certificate. The other thing that the estoppel certificate also includes is how much your security deposits are. Remember, the security deposits, they don't belong to the owner of the building. The owner of the building only holds them so that when that tenant moves out, if there's any damages, the owner's got a source of of cash where he can be compensated for damages. And
yeah, that's very important.
Absolutely.
If
and so if you're
they don't collect the deposit, then you'll be paying everything.
That's it. And you could be, there's cases where the new owner comes in and the security deposits are not properly accounted for. The old owner takes the security deposits, nothing's said or done with them. And then it comes time, the new owner's sitting there and the tenant goes, hey, I'm moving out and I want my security deposit.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the money in an account to hold or to return.
Because that way, if the tenant indicated has no deposit in there, the tenant cannot ask for the money later on. Yeah.
But if there is a difference between what the lease says versus what the estoppel certificate says, investigate it, find out what the problem is. It's better to get it taken care of during your due diligence period than it is after you've sold it.
Or something out the line from the lease. The lease say yes, there is, and the estimate say no. You know, so
exactly right. Yeah. Remember this: in the state of Arizona, there is no contract that is verbal. If you're talking about a lease is a contract. It has to be written if it's for more than, you know, if it's a long-term lease.
Right. Yeah. So that's all the information that we Mr. Scott Barlow just provided. You know, he very analyzed. I mean, like numbers. For me, when I okay, so how much the bottom number? How much do I get? So you know, but this is very, you gotta, when you do investment, you gotta know step by step, like the cap rate, how much you get, and how many years you got to pay off that, and how long you can keep that building. All that number, you know, all the way how calculation is really great information he provided today. Even I learned it, but I know before I just was thinking, okay, so how much for the bride, how much monthly I can get, and at the end of the year, how much bottom line. That's all. I just want to know the bottom number, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
But when you sell it back, when you're thinking like investment meaning selling, buying, right? So when you sell something, of course you want to do all that number to show to the new buyer, right?
Absolutely.
So you need somebody like really has those information in mind. Yeah, can help you through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, with some of the smaller properties, a single family home with a duplex, threeplex, or fourplex, it's not too difficult. And the same sheets that I've used to go through these calculations, they're readily available. If you need a copy, feel free to contact me via email, telephone, and we'll put my information up here in a minute. I can email you these forms and, you know, just print them off as you need them. But if you have questions about anything in particular, feel free to give me a call. I'd be happy to answer any questions I can for you.
Yeah, wow, that's very helpful. That's a great information. All the form that he has a wide knowledge on all the investment. So it's a great thing that he out there helping everyone. So anybody has potential, who's thinking of getting more. Buying more getting investment into your portfolio. To remember Mr. Scott Barlow from
Thank you.
SF Fuller. Yeah, okay. We thinking like maybe like for the next show you're gonna get into another criteria, right? You know, like a single. Will you say the number is applied for single family, for multiple unit? But like maybe commercial, is that the same thing? Is that
very similar?
Yeah, similar.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Commercial ends up being a little bit more complicated, and you can get into things. You know, for the most part, when it comes to residential leasing, single family homes, multi apartments, you name it, most folks are used to a 1-year lease.
Yeah,
and it's pretty standard. On commercial properties, you get into variables with much longer term leases. You know, there's some properties,
like 2 years or ever like month to month, like sometimes like more than.
Sometimes they can go month to month when they've gone, but most larger commercial leases, what happens with them is as you approach the end of the lease period, and you can have it'll specify that when that lease is done, that lease is done. So
Like
you
done.
need,
If they need to sign up or they don't, they cannot
no,
continue.
you can
Okay.
you can renew the lease. But one of the things about commercial leases is that they're much longer lived. For example, you see some of these drugstores that are on the corners.
Right.
Some of those may be on 25-year leases.
Oh, okay.
And built into the lease, every year there may be a lease increase. So it may increase 3 or 5% every year. So in year one, it's a set rate.
So they have a table.
Absolutely.
Breaking it down.
Already. So
that's percentage is fixed. What if the number for the second year is different outside the market rate? They're still going to stick with
they sign
with the lease.
With the lease. The lease is a contract.
Okay.
Now, when you get into commercial leases, there's approximately 7 different types of leases that are available.
Oh.
That's a whole nother show, but
that's another thing.
We can talk about full service. As well as ground leases. We can talk about triple net. So there are single net, double net, and what each of those mean. We can talk about common area maintenance, those types of things. But important information for somebody that's considering a commercial property as well. Yeah.
I think like we got a lot of different investment from everyone. So, but we want to finish the residential, and then we're going to move to those more with even land or with commercial and all that.
So next week we'll talk a little bit about single family homes. Maybe include a lease.
A lease for that, and what happened.
What's some of the most important parts of to include in a lease for residential property.
And of course, this is like between like even you are a landlord, and also the tenant can learn from it too.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So both ways. Yeah. Because you're a tenant, then you're going to be a landlord because you make money, right? So you can buy a house, you can be a landlord. Okay, so I think like we're gonna be finished this topic for this week, and we will see you guys next week again with the VAATV Real Estate Show with Scott Barlow. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful week.
Bye bye.
Vi xin cảm ơn sự theo dõi của tất cả quý vị trong những giây phút vừa qua. Chương trình VAATV xin kính chào, tạm biệt và xin hẹn gặp lại quý vị vào lần phát hình kỳ tới. Mọi chi tiết về thông tin thương mại và bảo trợ, xin mời quý vị hãy liên lạc về địa chỉ email vaatelevision@gmail.com và số điện thoại là 480 289 9816 480 289 9816, website vaatv.com và vaaznews.com. Xin kính chào, tạm biệt.